Renaissance in the current context of pandemic, inequality, and climate change. This webinar is organized in collaboration with the Xavier Institute of Management in Jamshedpur, India, and the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Institutions in the United States of America. All these educational institutions are part of the International Association of Jesuit Universities, with which OSHAL thanks for its support to this seminar. I would like to introduce Father Michael Garanzini, Secretary for Higher Education of the Society of Jesus and President of the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities in the United States. Thank you, Father Garanzini, for being with us. Father Joseph Christie, Director of the Xavier School of Management and appointed World Secretary for Higher Education of the Society of Jesus. Thank you, Father Christie, for your participation. And finally, I introduce Father Luis Arriaga, President of the Latin American Association of Jesuit Universities and Rector of ITESO, Jesuit University in Guadalajara, Mexico. Thank you, Father Arriaga, for ITESO's hospitality for this webinar. I would like to invite participants in Zoom webinar and Facebook to pose the questions you may have about the content of our webinar in the chats we have opened for your participation. Our webinar team will make a synthesis of your questions for our panel to answer towards the end of the dialogue. To begin this conversation, I would like to call everyone's attention to the following facts. Scientists are finding certain relationships among environmental degradation and the pandemic. For instance, they say the reduction of more than half of the animal population on the planet may be related to having more and more diverse viruses attacking humanity. On the other hand, climate change is challenging us to keep global warming in precise margins so that our species is able to live on this planet. Is it possible for Jesuit universities to really contribute against these enormous challenges? Father Garanzini, I give you the word.
Thank you, Francisco. Yes, it's very possible, and it's very important that Jesuit universities take a look at these big issues and determine how it is they can make a contribution. As part of the many universities who will be interested in these questions, I think we have something unique to offer because our tradition of Jesuit education is to put men and women into leadership positions in their societies, to put them in positions with an ethical conscience and with a sense of the common good, so that what we need is the leadership to understand how important it is that whatever solutions we must come to, whatever efforts we have to correct climate change, to stop the global inequity or deal with global inequities, it's important that men and women are thinking of the common good, because otherwise we will be reduced to battles and conflicts within society and between nations that simply will lead to further destruction. They will not lead to solutions. So first of all, it's the kind of leader that we put out from our schools that holds the key to the future. So that is the first and most important issue I think that we as Jesuit universities can contribute to. The second thing is that we have already been asked by the Holy Father, Pope Francis, we have been asked by him to take a serious look at the way all of these problems are interconnected. All of his work, but especially Laudato Si, has pushed us in the direction of seeing the interconnections. And that's precisely, Francisco, your question is, are these things related? They seem to be related and affecting one another. And we have already been told they are, and we should be wise to this, and we should be concerned that we see and keep the interconnections very clear. So I'll stop there. Maybe maybe there are other questions.
Thank you, Father Garanzini. Father Christie, we would like to hear from you.
It is a serious problem, especially in countries like India. There are a lot of statistics like 12.5% of deaths in India is due to air pollution. And more than 86% of water bodies are polluted. As Pope Francis says, the people on the margins are the ones who are deeply affected by this ecological problem, environmental degradation. So it's a problem, a justice problem. It's not an ecological problem. That's why he's asking us to respond to the question, in what state do we want to leave our common home as a heritage for our children and for the future generation? As a response to this call, Father Garanzini took the initiative and called together a dozen business leaders, business deans, to reimagine the future of Jesuit management education. Also to respond to the 4 apostolic preferences of the society. One of them is caring for our common good. So I was also part of this group, and we have come out with an inspirational document. It does not spell out concrete action plans, but each conference, each continent, each country, and each business school is called to action to translate the vision of the document into reality in their own particular context. Already various groups are working on the curriculum revision, the course syllabus, what we need to do, the new courses that we need to offer, etc. I see as a business school, from the point of business school, intervention at the 4 levels. The first one at the level of education and training to create an awareness. See, we have a core course on sustainability so that the students are well informed of what is happening. The second one is an experiential knowledge that is taking them to the villages, to the people on the margins, to see for themselves, to experience for themselves how the poor are being affected. The third one is to get involved in research in this area, how the new renewable energy could help us, etc. The fourth one, to get into certain actions, some strategies, to get involved in the lives of the people and to work towards creating a place for future generations. I think as business schools, we have great responsibility. It's not just enough to get involved in certain activities, but I think we need to have an attitudinal change. Because today there's so much of pressure from the companies to make quick money. There's so much of greed on the individuals to make quick money, without any respect for ecology and without regard for the poor. I think that's a great challenge for us to create this awareness, but the great challenge, I think, is doable.
Thank you, Father Christie. Is it possible, Father Arriaga, for Jesuit universities to really contribute against these challenges?
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. I would like to begin by thanking Fathers Michael Garanzini and Joseph Christie for accepting the invitation to this dialogue on some of the global challenges that Jesuit universities are facing and how we can affront such challenges and transform our societies. To answer the question briefly, I certainly believe that it is possible for Jesuit universities to contribute to resolve humanity's environmental challenges. As president of the Association of Jesuit Latin American Universities, better known as AUSJAL, I'm honored to witness the work of our institutions facing head-on environmental degradation while supporting the defense of the human rights of those who are the most seriously affected by human rights mistreatment or nature. Let me put an example. The case of our collaboration with the Pan-Amazonian Ecclesial Network and the Jesuit Pan-Amazonian Service over the last years. This collaboration has included interinstitutional research among several Jesuit universities, contributions to advocacy, communication strategies, and formation programs. Our collaborative research includes the drafting of a report regarding the human rights situation of the indigenous people of the Pan-Amazonia region in collaboration with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Our contribution to advocacy, along with the Pan-Amazonian Ecclesial Network, about Resolution 1/2020, called Pandemic and Human Rights in the Americas, was recently published in July. This resolution is a very relevant international legal document for the defense of human rights in the difficult context we are facing, including access to health services for the disadvantaged. Communication initiatives includes the presentation and circulation of this report and resolution. On the other hand, formation embraces close cooperation with ecclesial networks, state universities, and the Inter-American human rights system to create and promote what we call a School of Human Rights and Integral Ecology. Our Human Rights School has trained more than 1,600 alumni during the last 16 years, not only in the Amazonian region, but in 8 countries from South, Central, and North America, with the collaboration of 11 AUSJAL universities. I would like to acknowledge all the universities participating in this program, as well as those closely cooperating with the Pan-Amazonian Ecclesial Network and Jesuit Service. All of these actions, including the AUSJAL Strategic Plan 2019 to 2025, resulted from a deep process of discernment during our assembly based on a detailed analysis of the reality of our region, and of course, as Father Christie said, considering the orientation of the Society of Jesus' universal apostolic preferences. AUSJAL first strategic global launches our association to the strengthening of our identity and mission as universities oriented towards social and environmental transformation and reconciliation. This strengthening shall occur according to our third goal, through an advocacy approach that is enriched through action in education, research, and engagement. In our experience, this collaboration is more productive when we work as an international network, just like the Jesuit General Congregation 36 invite us to do. Moreover, these actions are oriented through our understanding of Jesuit advocacy under certain circumstances. First, preferential attention to the most disadvantaged, considering them as subjects of change. Second, the search for a structural transformation towards a more just and humane society. Third, focus on a local action with a global articulation structure from bottom upwards. Fourth, social cultural analysis for us that is very important. And fifth, a teamwork-based implementations with an inclusive sensibility together with the cooperation of Jesuits and lay persons.
Thank you, Father Arriaga. Education is certainly a privileged strategy for humanization and advocacy, as you say. In the present, education itself has its challenges. The pandemic lockdown is seriously challenging education. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, warned the world last week about the risk of 24 million students in the world dropping out of school due to the closure of educational institutions because of the COVID-19 pandemic. How can education, Jesuit education I refer to, contribute to the attention of this crisis? Father Garanzini, could you give us some words?
Sure. Thank you, Francesco. Francesco, there's an immediate challenge that we're facing right now at one of our institutions that might be an example of what is possible in the future. In Beirut, you know that there was a terrible explosion just last week, and it affected 2 of the 5 campuses at San Joseph, our school there, our university there. 2 of the campuses had sustained an incredible amount of damage because they're fairly close, within 2 kilometers of the blast. The rector of the university there has reached out to us in the International Association of Jesuit Universities and said, we need iPads and we need access to classes that are going to be online at other universities so that our university can continue to operate. So it's a very good request and I think a very doable request. We can raise some money and we can get iPads for the students that don't have access there at San Joseph, but we could utilize our online courses, and almost all of our schools now have more and more online courses. Some of them this fall will be completely online. So we can continue the educational process at St. Joseph, where we see tremendous difficulty and the interruption of instruction, by perhaps connecting these students with the same course that's being offered in another university across the world by an inter-Jesuit, inter-school agreement that we will accept each other's courses, especially at this particular stage. So that's one very concrete way, in one instance, in which we see the value of a network collaboration, where we can reach out and help keep these students in school during this particular double crisis in Lebanon. And so that's just one example, but I think there's many ways in which Jesuit education can reach out to help more people, more individuals who are seeking a higher education, where we can reach them now, because what the pandemic has done, it has forced every one of our faculty, all of them, not just the ones who feel comfortable, but now those who did not feel comfortable, are being forced to take a look at how we can go online. And they're perhaps being forced to go online. And if those courses are online, we can develop a system whereby we can bring into our classrooms on our campuses people who would never otherwise have had access to that campus. And because of distance, because of poverty and inability to pay, etc. So it's an interesting development that I think the pandemic has shown us this is possible. That's just one.
Thank you, Father Garanzini, for these ideas. Father Christie, could you share us a bit of what is happening in East Asia, especially India?
There are 2 worlds here. One is have and have-nots. And I should also say that in terms of population, India has 1.37 billion. That is 40% more than North America and South America together. And out of this, 2/3 live in rural areas. So that means practically the whole population of South America and North America together live in rural area. So the people in urban areas like colleges, like business schools like ours, we don't have any difficulty to offer programs online. And we're able to reach, even here, sometimes some students who live in rural areas have difficulty to access because of lack of bandwidth. In fact, some of them have come and staying in some houses close by so that they have access to the classes. But the situation in rural areas is very different. We have problem of electricity and problem of connectivity. I visited some of the mission stations close by. Even ordinarily, they don't have mobile connection. So even to connect with the provincial from the communities here, they have to go a mile away and to connect with us. I think this is the situation. So this is a big challenge for us. Easy for us. See, what we do, we not only do synchronously can have online courses and live, but also we put it record in the iCloud for people who don't have a bandwidth to access. But we have serious problem of helping the people who are poor, who are in the rural area, and it's a big challenge for all of us Jesuits working in the rural areas, particularly in the primary and the secondary schools.
Thank you, Father Christie. Father Arriaga, what can you tell us?
Jesuit education is currently contributed to prevent millions of children and young people dropping out of school during the pandemic lockdown. For instance, AUSJAL is currently working with the International Jesuit Federation Fe y Alegría, which in Spanish stands for Faith and Joy, which brings basic education to 820,000 marginalized students from 17 countries in Latin America. This year, Fe y Alegría and AUSJAL signed an agreement with IBM, allowing us to support the development of STEM. It means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics skills with students from 45 Fe y Alegría schools in Argentina, Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala, and Peru. If we consider the average number of students per educational center, this project could make the difference for more than 1,600 students, their families, and communities. We are also supporting the transition of universities and schools beyond our network to online learning. As Father Garanzini was saying, several AUSJAL universities, Ruiz de Montoya University in Peru, Andrés Bello University in Caracas, the Catholic University in Córdoba, Rafael Andívar University in Guatemala, as well as the Mexican Iberoamericana universities and ITESO have opened a resource website and are offering webinar guides for teachers and students to help them in this transition. These initiatives are based on our approach to education as a human right, as it is referred in the document Right to Education for All, which was published and launched by the provincials, the Jesuit Latin American Provincial Conference last year. So Jesuit universities should work on the basis of this approach with NGOs, government, and enterprises in order to make education available, accessible, acceptable, and adaptable for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Arriaga. Pedagogical experts are harshly criticizing distance learning, which you three have talked about, because of its reproduction of inequalities due to the unequal access to the internet and computers in most of the world's societies, as Father Christie was sharing us. Another disadvantage of distance learning that researchers are pointing out is its similitude with Brazilian pedagogue Paulo Freire's so-called banking education, where teachers deposit, to say it that way, they deposit knowledge in students currently through the screens of computers or even TV, as in the case of Mexican public education this fall. What is your opinion, fathers, on these critiques? Father Garanzini?
Francisco, I think the critiques are valid. This medium works much better for older students. They can use this medium of distance learning and online learning in much more creative ways. They can be flexible about their time, commitment to it, and so on. They also have the capacity to concentrate, because it does require a great deal of concentration. So there's shortcomings with online learning, and it's certainly not ideal. I think everyone would admit that. We certainly learned in the first months of the pandemic, when many schools around the world are now going to try to some kind of distance learning. We've learned too that there's a great disparity between the haves and the have-nots, as Father Christie was saying, on who has access to this technology. So those are challenges that are simply embedded here right now in our present dilemma. But the pandemic situation has shown us clearly that some things can be done to keep young people connected to schooling. We need parents more involved with child's education, especially if the children are younger. We need perhaps more tutoring going on. The services and facilities like these online educational formats, they can be used to reach out personally to students, letting them check in, how they're doing, giving time during the day for young people to take a break and also come back to these things. So there's more creative and better ways of using it, and we're learning about that in a serious way. And the big challenge will be, I think for us, is equality. That is, how do we get the resources into the hands of students no matter where they are? This is temporary. This present pandemic, we know that there'll be an end to it, but we know that there will be other circumstances. We also know that we can bring quality education into very remote places if we can get the resources to those remote places, the right kind of internet access, the right kind of devices for connecting. So it's a story of potential, and it's a story with some challenges yet, but we're learning, and the learning curve is very steep right now. We're learning a lot very, very quickly, just like we're learning a lot about the science of this pandemic, learning very much very quickly. So I have hope for the future, and I think I'm trying to make sure that comes across, that actually we'll look back on this period as a period in which there was a great amount of ferment and new public interest, new general interest in correcting some of these inequalities and these problems.
Thank you, Father Garanzini. Father Christie, what are your thoughts about these challenges?
As Michael said, it is a big challenge. The best option would be to have classes face to face, but we are in it not out of choice, but out of necessity, out of compulsion. We lose out on cura personalis, one of the hallmarks of the Jesuit education. We are losing the extracurricular activities like sports, cultural activities, or even lab facilities and so on, peer learning, group work. A lot of things we are losing out in the whole thing. But we are constantly been reflecting the faculty, how best we could replicate the same learning effectiveness in online learning as we have in the face-to-face learning. I do agree that Paulo Freire's critique is valid to a certain extent, but today we have a different technology. When he critiqued saying that the process did not help them for problem solving, for critical thinking, but today we have a better technology in terms of connecting with the students for group work, for peer learning, etc. So we are working on various methods of exploiting the technology today to replicate the same level of experience. But certainly it is not equal to face, but I think we are trying to do that. And as Michael said, that it is difficult for students to be in front of the screen all the time, difficult to have bandwidth. In some families, when they have 2-3 children, they have difficulty to have 2-3 computers. Even among the middle class, even among the faculty here, you have 2 children at family. He said, I'm giving away my laptop to them, father, to work on it. I don't have laptop to work on my papers. I mean, this is the situation. This is the situation. But positively, I think it has opened up a lot. As Father Michael said, that we could think in terms of extending our education in remote areas. But I also see a possibility in future that there's going to be a new normal of blended learning. We do not need to have the students say all the 2 years or 4 years within the campus. Now they can be at home for a while. So the same facilities can be used for many more students. Now for 6 months, you can use for a certain number of students. When these guys leave, the same facilities can be used for some other set of students. So we could double the capacity of the students and so on. That's what I'm thinking a lot. I mean, that's going to be the future. And we can also reduce the cost of the education. Like if they're allowed to take like MOOCs, some of those programs outside, certain 1 semesters, 2 semesters, when they can take all these courses online. And then they did not come to the campus, and 1/3 or 1/4 of the cost which we usually give as a scholarship can be very well reduced. I mean, that also I see a possibility in future positively.
Thank you, Father Christie, for this hopeful possibilities you share with us. Father Luis Arriaga, what is your opinion upon this situation and problems?
Serious consideration of inequities is particularly relevant in a world where education is unavailable and of unacceptable quality for many children during their first year of life. This is due to economic, social, and educational reasons. I was reading the chat right now, and I saw a comment from Joao Elton. And Joao Elton is pointed out the big problem in Brazil because students don't have access to computers or smartphones to connect to classes. This is not only in Brazil, I think it's also a problem in India, as Father Christie said, and other parts of Latin America and the world. And unfortunately, these obstacles are often closely related to previous inequalities. Moreover, for the disadvantaged, the pandemic lockdown has aggravated the impact of inequality, resulting in limited access to computers, the internet, and even televisions. This is a clear example of what we call educational injustice. Because of this, Jesuit universities need to be particularly innovative to contribute to the creation of solutions to the emerging problems in education, as well as contribute to other fields in social and environmental justice. Challenges for Jesuit innovation are not only technological, but also social. The normalization of violence, racism, inequality, and human rights abuses is common in many high-end universities in Latin America. This is a serious academic and social problem. In order to call ourselves a university, we should be free and committed to search for the truth and the justice. And as regards technology, it is a means to real-time communication. This can contribute to equality, human rights, and democracy. We recently experienced the worldwide phenomenon resulting from George Floyd's murder at the hands of police brutality in Minneapolis, followed by the Black Lives Matter movement. This movement brought discussions on racism and contributions on how to eradicate it from different cultures on a global scale. The quality of distance and combined online-offline education depends on the pedagogical model adopted. Jesuit education is the formation of competent, conscious, compassionate, and committed alumni. Jesuit alumni should lead in the reconciliation between humanity and the earth, our common home. Distance Jesuit education in Latin America during the pandemic has brought about the participation of our students in innovation, research, and engagement in projects such as the design and production of recyclable material masks for protection against the COVID-19 virus. It is also open access to webinars on topics such as the economic perspective, consultancy, and innovations in business for small and micro enterprises, as well as online talks for other areas such as responsible consumption and human rights strategic litigation. You can see our webpage on our scholar, and you can see all the variety that we are doing. Our universities are offering psychological and spiritual assistance to those who especially need it because of the lockdown, and even St. Ignatius of Loyola's spiritual exercises have been delivered through the web. This is education at its best, with technological support, but above all, with Ignatian pedagogy, the key to a Jesuit education.
Thank you, Father Arriaga. For speaking of the spiritual exercises, Jesuit education is worldwide recognized for its emphasis on spiritual formation. Can such kind of education contribute to encourage people in the worst economic crisis ever registered? Father Garanzini, what can you tell us?
That's a very big question. Can it? And I think the answer is yes, it can. That is, the spiritual exercises help us situate ourselves inside our world as a world that is imbued with the Spirit of God and Jesus as a model for full human living. So the exercises help us understand our place and our potential in this world. And the more we can translate the Ignatian spirituality into our educational projects, the more we help people discover that they have a true calling, a vocation, and that they're called to be men and women for others. They're called to live the kind of values that Father Luis articulated so well, that they are people of competence and conscience and compassion and committed to justice. All that's embedded in the exercises, and the exercises help facilitate that process. And that is what a Jesuit education is aiming to do, the very same things, to form men and women who have those key Ignatian values. To go back to what we said earlier, if a university is the place where students get formed by taking a very serious look at the challenges that the world faces, the world's real needs, then they're called ultimately to service. So we move from the formation program to a serious look at the problems that face us as people. The educational programs help us to understand those problems better, and then that leads to action. And that's ultimately what the exercises are also about, which is how does a committed person find her or his way into working for justice, for equality, for reconciliation. One thing that Father Luis pointed out when he mentioned the Black Lives Matter movement and the anti-racism movement that started here, you know, the Americans were, US Americans were highly shocked even that their own struggle with our own struggle against racism had such a resonance around the world. There were hundreds of cities around the world where there were similar demonstrations. It just points out that that issue of racism is endemic in every culture. And people resonated, I think, with the Black Lives Matter movement here because they know that in their own culture, there is racism against the Native Indians, the Native peoples, racism against people that are of a different color, of a different tribe, of a different ethnic background. And there's this is keeping us back. It's making us less able to deal with the challenges that affect all of us. And the university is precisely the place where we can take a look at those issues and take a look at ourselves and get ready to move out and change the world. So that's imbuing the educational process with the spirit of the exercises is in the Jesuit DNA, if you will. It's what we should be and ought to be and inevitably must do. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Garanzini, for your words. Father Christie, what can you share with us as well?
One of the important hallmarks of Jesuit education is the holistic formation. We are looking at all the quotients in terms of intellectual quotient, spiritual quotient, emotional quotient. But how do we understand the whole spiritual formation, say, in places like India? So we are in a multi-religious context. The Catholics are only 2.3%. Christians are 2.3%, and Catholics are about 1.5%. So we are a minority in this situation. Even the number of students we have in the campus, the Catholics are very few. So, but the focus is to help an Hindu to be a good Hindu, to help a Muslim to be a good Muslim, to help a Christian to be a good Christian. So every religion has the whole idea of concern for one another, love, justice. So we need to take inspiration from all religions and help these people to develop the same value system as Michael has been pointed out, the compassion and concern for one another in terms of developing them as men and women for others. it's heartwarming to see them coming out to help one another, all those non-Christians today. But I always tell them here among our students, I think we want to give more importance to spirituality than being a religiosity. A spirituality is much broader than being a religious. A religion is to do with beliefs, creeds, or rituals. But religiosity, that leads to religiosity. A spirituality is much greater realm, which gives meaning to you, which gives meaning to my life, which gives meaning about my own concern for ecology, we talked about initially, my own concern for one another, my own concern about just and humane world. I think which gives a meaning. And today's youngsters, I feel they are very fragile, very much stressed out. And we say that now depression is the disease of modernity. So my counselor now tells me she's much more busy now than otherwise. She used to spend 8 hours here at the campus, but now she says she spends about 14 hours on the phone all the time. The students are calling her. Sometimes the parents are calling her. There's so much of difficulty to face the stress of pandemic, fear, panic situation, and how do we cope with studies, etc., etc. I think we need to help this spirituality. I feel will help them, to face the reality, to face the stress, to face the challenges of life. I think is that spiritual formation that I have been pushing among our students, that whether they belong to Catholics or Christians or Hindus or Muslims, that we need to develop this, so which will help them to be a good human beings at the end.
Thank you, Father Christie. Your words about an interreligious dialogue are inspiring and challenging as well. Father Arriaga, what can you share with us?
Good spiritual formation is the foundation of Jesuit social and environmental commitment, and our universities are recognized for offering the world the gift of our spirituality. This spiritual formation can make us creative when looking for new models, be that pedagogical, environmental, or economic, or political. We don't see to go back to normality, but to build together a new era in human history. I just read a comment from Carlos de Obeso from Guadalajara, and he was asking about if this method is here to stay. And well, we have been answering this question through different, for example, articles. We have been drafting articles about the ethical consequences on this. We have a magazine called Aurora. It's in Spanish, and you can consult it online. So this dark moment for the entire world in terms of both health and the global economy is an opportunity for a renaissance. And taking advantage of this occasion will demand physical, psychological, and spiritual strength from us all, especially to encourage those who are physically, psychologically, or economically disadvantaged. A good example of down-to-earth spiritual formation is the Ignatian University Leadership Program, designed to strengthening the process of integral education in students who are given the opportunity to develop skills in leadership along with social commitment from an Ignatian approach. So this program was born out of a pilot experience in 2007 where 6 universities from our 4 different countries participated. Based on this experience, a team of coordinators and facilitators was formed to accompany the experience in each of these venues. They meet systematically to exchange experiences and improve the processes. To date, there are more than 3,000 graduates and 20 universities involved, universities from Latin America. This program guides participants to commit to their society in order to have the necessary skills to participate in processes of advocacy based on our commitment to life, faith, and justice in the context of their own local region, but with a global perspective. This program includes two special activities that take place out with the university. First, the experience of the spiritual exercises, at least a small retreat, and two, an insertion experience with young people to live in a community alongside with a vulnerable population, giving them the opportunity to understand their reality and work as a team with the leaders in a community initiative. Social, political, educational, environmental, and businesses leaders in Latin America have been formed in this program. We don't simply train leaders. We form each individual based on a true knowledge of their characteristics and possibilities for growth in order to better foster personal, professional, and social development. Professors at ITESO and presidents of Aushal universities have shared with me how the pandemic has moved our academic communities even more towards the care of one another. Yesterday, I had a very fruitful conversation with Father Jorge Humberto Peláez, president of Javeriana University in Colombia, and last week with Fernando Ponce from Pontifical Catholic University in Ecuador. These universities, like several others, have been very creative in the development of solutions in order to take care of students' physical and psychological health. This is a concrete way to put the cura personalis in action. Jesuit universities are contributing to a new renaissance. We should educate ourselves and others towards sanity, solidarity, sustainability, and the search for the greater good. This is Jesuit education.
Thank you, Father Arriaga, for this inspiring intervention in Ignatian pedagogy. Now I will pose some of the questions we have been receiving, as well as we have received greetings from Brazil, India, Guadalajara, of course, and abroad. I will pose a few of these questions we have selected from webinar participants around the world. And if you will, fathers, answer them in the order you prefer, just by raising your hands, so that people in the webinar team can put the spotlight on you and give you the microphone. I will put a couple of questions together. We have one from the Catholic University of Pernambuco in Brazil, where they share with us they are facing a big problem because a big part of their students do not have access to smartphones or computers to connect to the lessons. Also, the quality of connections in the city are expensive. It is expensive to find high quality connections. So they are having problems because they need to have a high performance in order to keep scholarships from the government. They need to get good grades. The lockdown forced them to stop courses and then having difficulties learning. This is a situation similar to what Father Joseph Christie shared with us some minutes ago. He shared some hopeful alternatives with us as well that may lead to the second question we received, that is, if you believe that even facing these challenges, blended learning and what we are calling now the green office are here to stay. Who would like to begin answering these challenging questions? Father Garanzini?
Thank you, Francisco. Yeah, I'll take a crack at this. Every major disruption that affects higher education causes us to reassess how our business model functions. We spend much on buildings and in other kinds of infrastructure so that the community, the students and faculty, can come and have a good place to carry on the educational process. I think an investment in technology, for example, buying an iPad is going to be just as crucial, if not more crucial, than buying books. And as books go online, we can save money there, but we need then to put the money into the device that allows us to access those books. There's an economic disruption going on, and we see the results of that right now clearly in this pandemic, and it's going to cause us to re-examine how we structure the university and what we prioritize. Perhaps we need less physical infrastructure and we need a little bit more money put in technology. I remember when I first became an administrator, and the technology department there was simply getting computers on the desks of major administrators. That's the only people that had them. And then we had a kind of another crisis because the faculty needed computers to do their work, and we had to shift our budgets and shift how we fund things there, because it wasn't just paying a salary, it was also paying a salary and buying a computer for a faculty member to do their work. Absolutely necessary. Today, I think we see another problem. It's now necessary to put those computers in the hands of students. So we have to pressure government for more flexibility with the money they distribute. We have to look at how we charge and what we charge for. We have to look at where we spend our time and our efforts and our money. So that's one issue now that has become really clear. Education in the future will be much more technology dependent. It's a major cost center for us. That would be my first salvo at this problem.
Thank you, Father Garanzini. These social challenges are very relevant and related to what Father Luis Arriaga called not going back exactly to the same normality. Fathers, would you like to give us some other comment on these questions? Father Christie Arriaga?
Yes. You go first, or do you want to go first? Okay, I will take it. So first, I would like to answer the first question that you pointed out about the lack of access that many countries have. First of all, the right of education is a responsibility of the state. So that is very clear according to international human rights standards, such as the Inter-American Convention on Human Rights, the San Salvador Protocol. So they establish the responsibility of the government to the right of education. So I want to make that clear, because we are seeking for that as Jesuit universities. So Jesuit universities have made a worldwide effort in order to transit from offline to online education. Investment in technology and pedagogical made during the last years allow us to do this transition in a matter of days, or it was very quick. though offering high-quality education with a close care for students is an everyday challenge in online formation. One of Aushalo's strategic goals is pedagogical and technological innovation in order to continue strengthening our universities in Latin America, especially the networks. And the second thing that I would like to point out is we have a moral responsibility to give hope through our spirituality. So I think this is another relevant challenge that is particularly relevant nowadays. In the dialogue with our students, it is evident that youth will not accept the current times as the end of history, as some of authors like Fukuyama declare the end of the last millennium. Our students will neither resign to the catastrophes forecast that environmental scientists estimate for our future. So I think youth is having a protagonist role in the impulse to solidarity and sustainability projects during these days, and will be responsible of guiding the horizons of humanity during the current century. And of course, I think inspiring them through Jesuit spirituality and with, of course, very good academic excellence is a moral responsibility and quite a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Arriaga. We're also receiving greetings from the Aushal community that has been participating from University of Táchira in Venezuela, as well as from the Fundación Iglesia de la Compañía in Ecuador, who is asking, speaking of hope and what we learned from young people in our schools, if this approaches, spiritual approaches, blended education approaches, could be taken also to high school, could they apply to high school? What can you tell us, Father Christie, Garanzini, Father Arriaga?
Francisco?
Yes, thank you.
The challenge for high school, for our secondary schools, in some ways they're always ahead, I think, of us at the university. They see the new generation coming up, and they see what the new emphases are and what their world looks like, and the experience of the high schools is going to be very important. This is a little bit off of the question, but it's something I want to say. This pandemic and its effect on so many parts of our society has shown them, and this will be the defining issue of this generation. That's what they call sometimes Generation Z, Zeta. This will be the defining moment for them, because they're coming into awareness of the political dynamics, the social dynamics, the personal dynamics, how this has impacted the family, and so on. They see how interconnected we are as a world, as a globe. The pandemic came from one part of the world. Quickly, it affected the whole world. They see how interconnected our social systems and economic systems are. This has affected the economy of the country. It's affected the food distribution networks. It's affected the way we see more inequality. We see now the inequality of certain workers and other workers. People with access to technology are better off than those that don't. People that have access to healthcare are better off than those that don't have access to healthcare. So they see so much of the problems. They're not theoretical problems. It's not a theory. It's not an abstract idea. They see the living result of the way the world is. And this is going to make them different than the generation ahead that did not experience this Same thing in their very formative years. So the high schools, they will see more what kind of a generation we have that's going to be coming into leadership in our world in 1 or 2 or 3 decades from now, and who we will inherit, the kind of student we will inherit in the university. This student, I hope, will be less concerned about herself or himself and more concerned about others, less concerned about my family's welfare and more concerned about my community's welfare, because I'm dependent on my community and I'm dependent on my country and I'm dependent on the global systems and organizations that affect the world. And hopefully too, they see the importance of spirituality. The way this has taught us all to look inside, to spend more time thinking, to spend more time with family, to spend more time in perhaps, hopefully, prayer. And this could make them different. What we have to do is ask the secondary school people, the high school people, how did you keep hope alive when they returned to you? How did you help them take all of this and develop a hopeful vision for the future to guide them? And then we have to build on that. Here's the skills you need. Here's a deeper look at the complexities of the problems. Here are avenues towards action. Your career is not the same as your vocation. What is your vocation, your true calling? Your career is only one part of your true calling. So I think collaboration with the secondary schools is extremely important. And the Jesuits have this system. No other university has this. That is easy access to the high school world, to the secondary school world, and the college world, because we have 800 regular high schools. We have all of those thousands of Fe y Alegría schools. So we really have a network where we can see what's coming and we can collaborate with them to continue to make progress on building a generation, a future generation that is able to change the world. So the pandemic, with all of the bad things it has done, may be the golden nugget embedded in this pandemic, in this situation. We may have a generation that wants to change things. It's a little more than your question asked, but I had to get that out there.
Hopeful.
Yeah.
It is hopeful and true. Thank you. Father Christie?
As Father Michael said, this crisis has also given us a new opportunity to think differently. When you speak of high school, I think the young guys are much more adaptable to change than the older people like us. And they are much more techno-savvy than even the college students. I see the way they play with laptops or mobiles. I think, it's amazing. They can do a much greater job. The challenge is for us educators to come out with a new pedagogy to make this whole education process much more effective, collaborative, adaptable. And here also I see that how do we get involved the parents, as Father Michael said earlier, because sometimes my secretary says she would come late. She would say, oh, my son had an exam for 45 minutes, so I have to be close to make sure that he has got all those internet connections and so on. I think there's a greater responsibility now, involvement of the parents, the education process. I mean, earlier they sent the school and then these people are free. But now there's no more there. No, they have to be at home with the students, with their children in their own process of education. I think in the future, it is going to be a collaborative process, education. not just that they come to school, that we are here as teachers transmitting what we want to transmit to them in terms of language. It's a collaborative process, as I said already, with the parents, collaborative process with the technology companies, in terms of providing computers, laptops, iPads for a cheaper rate so that it is easily accessible for the poor. A collaborative venture with telecom companies to offer better bandwidth. Maybe we need to work with them so that all the students have access to the classes that we have. I think so collaborative also with publishers. So now already for us, now we have a contract with all the publishers to give all ebooks. There's no more kind of a printed books. It's also good for ecology today. Little cheaper is available. So I think in the future we need to think of a totally a new system, a system of collaborative and system where the students can adapt to, as Michael said, a new situation of collaboration. A couple of months ago, I went to a small village close by one of the mission stations where Jesuits were working. I saw guys, 4 or 5 students, small kids, 7th or 8th standards, with one mobile in hand, watching the classes, all the 5 of them together and learning together, But though they don't have access for each of them to have a mobile, and there they are help there to each other, help each other to learn. I think this is going to be the future of the day, and there they also learn to help one another, learn together, and to become more compassionate, concerned about the whole new world.
Thank you, Father Christie, for these challenges. I would ask Father Luis Arriaga to give us a final word as a host of this webinar. We've spoken about quite a few challenges: economic, technological, pedagogical, and spiritual challenges towards hope. Father Arriaga?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you very much for hosting this, all the team of ITESO and all the people who are working very hard to make it possible. I would like to say that we have been working very close with the high schools. So we have been having meetings not only in Mexico, but also in Latin America. We just created what we call Educación, which is an association, a network of networks of all the educational networks that the Society of Jesus has in Latin America. So in Educación, there is the network of high schools, Ausjal, Fe y Alegría, among other networks, and we are working together in different projects. I think that one of the challenges is to reimagine the future of humanity, since deep questions have come to our minds during this pandemic and lockdown. Is life before the pandemic the normality we want to go back to? Ausjal universities and academics, of course, professors, are collaborating with Latin America provincial provinces with philosophical and social reflection in order to criticize social dynamics we shall not go back to. So the challenges of our countries are living could be an opportunity for our universities to rethink the world we want to rebuild together, and the best way to collaborate with its construction. Thank you very much again for your time. Thank you very much, Father Christie, Father Garanzini, and all the people who are watching. Especially, I would like to send a very saludo from all the people from Ausjal that are watching this webinar. Thank you for your time, and I hope this could be useful for our future as Ausjal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father Luis. Father Christie, Father Garanzini, final word, Father Garanzini.
Oh, the final word is simply thank you, Brother Luis, for putting this together, Francisco, and for all your staff there too. It's a great idea. I'm going to suggest that the other associations in our network of Jesuit institutions, that they copy this idea and reach out to all the colleagues in Jesuit education or people interested in Jesuit education to comment and bring the same kind of messages that we've been trying to bring. So thank you.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to, Father Christie.
Just want to thank you. Thank you for arranging it. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. I would like to thank the three of you, Father Michael Garanzini, Father Joseph Christie, Father Luis Arriaga, as well as the Jesuit University International Associations you lead, for your generous contributions during this webinar. On behalf of the Association of Jesuit Universities in Latin America, I would like to express our gratitude to all participants in this first dialogue on the pandemic, inequality, and climate change, Jesuit University's contribution to a renaissance. Thank you, everyone.